you know that I have 5 kids, and I've tried to teach them about all of the important things in life. I've taught them about Star Wars and the Lord of the Rings, how to build Lego, and why they should cheer for the Oilers. And of course, I've talked to them about Jesus and the church and the life of faith. Now, one of the most difficult or overwhelming things that I helped to teach them was how to ride a bike. I don't know if they found it as intimidating as I did, but I definitely found it hard. When I learned how to ride a bike 40 years ago, I constantly had band-aids on my elbows and on my knees from falling off. So I knew that part of the process was going to involve falling, scraping elbows and knees, and probably a few tears. Now, one of the key moments in learning how to ride a bike happens after you take the training wheels off. The kid gets on the bike, and a parent like me will help get the kid started by holding onto the back of the bike seat. As the kid starts to pedal, we run behind the bike for a little, helping them stay balanced, and then we let go. Sometimes the kid panics immediately, stops pedaling, and falls over. Other times they do not quite realize that we're not there anymore right away, but when they do, then they panic, stop pedaling, and then fall over. The scrapes and the tears follow, and sometimes the kid is shocked that you would even dare to let go. Where were you, they would say. What were you doing? Why would you let go? And then you try to explain that this is part of them learning how to ride a bike. The pain and the embarrassment that come from falling off, they're not meaningless. They're part of what you have to go through in order to get the freedom that comes from being a bike rider. And for a kid, that moment when you can ride a bike without training wheels is amazing. A whole world of possibilities open up to you. You can bike to your friend's house, to the park, to 7-Eleven way faster than if you were trying to walk there. But before a kid gets to that freedom, they usually need to fall off. A lot. And then they ask that question of, where were you? Why didn't you help? Because the falling really hurts. Now you can make a parallel between this, learning how to ride a bike, and some of the hard times we all go through in life. There are 100 different ways in which we experience suffering in this life, and some of you have suffered so much more than I have. It's not surprising then that some of us turn to God with the same question, where were you and why didn't you help? And there's a way you can compare our sufferings to that experience of learning how to ride a bike. St. Paul writes in his second letter to the Corinthians, "For this slight momentary affliction is preparing us for an eternal weight of glory beyond all measure, because we look not at what can be seen, but at what cannot be seen. For what can be seen is temporary, but what cannot be seen is eternal." And in his letter to the Romans, he says, "We rejoice in our sufferings, knowing that suffering produces endurance, and endurance produces character, and character produces hope, and hope does not disappoint us, because God's love has been poured into our hearts through the Holy Spirit which has been given to us." Now these, and other passages like them, remind us that the hard things that we go through build us towards something greater. Just like that kid learning to ride a bike, once we get to the other side of the suffering, we've grown in endurance, in character, and in hope. And ultimately, the thing that we hope for is beyond our imagining. It points us to heaven. Also, like that kid riding a bike, it's not that God makes or wants these things to happen to us. I don't let go of the seat and push my kid's bike over. I let it go knowing it might be hard on them, but that going through and growing through that hard thing is actually good for them. And so God sometimes lets us suffer these things for a good we can't see in the moment. But there's also one significant difference between the kid learning to ride a bike and the sufferings we endure. When I let go of the bike, my kid's on his own. We are never on our own. Jesus' last promise to us in the Gospel of Matthew is that he will be with us always until the end of the age. There's a story that used to get told around churches when I was a kid called Footprints in the Sand. If you Google it, you can find all sorts of posters, pictures, and videos in which the full story is told, but here's the essentials. A man has a dream where he and Jesus are walking on a beach together. As they're walking, he's rewatching various scenes and moments from his life. When the man looks behind him, he usually sees 2 sets of footprints winding their way across the beach, one from the man and one from the Lord. But there are certain points, times that match up with the lowest and the saddest moments of his life, where he sees only 1 set of footprints. So he asks Jesus, "Why? Why, when I needed you the most, would you leave me?" And Jesus' answer is both beautiful and profound. He says, "My precious child, I love you and I will never leave you." Never, ever during your trials and testings. When you saw only one set of footprints, it was then that I carried you. So when we stop and ask the question, God, where are you? When hard things go on, there are several answers. Part of it is to help build our character and endurance for this life. Part of it is to remind us that we have a hope beyond health and wealth and success in this life. And that our hope is ultimately about getting to heaven where there will be no more suffering and no more pain and every tear is wiped away. But in the midst of it all, we need to remember that we are never, ever alone. That God does in fact carry us on our worst days, on our best days, and on every day in between. And in many ways, I would say that we see that most clearly in the cross. When you look at the cross, you see a God who doesn't exclude himself, who doesn't avoid suffering, but whose sufferings brought about something greater for all of us. Jesus' death frees us from slavery to sin, frees us from eternal death, and opens up the doors to heaven for us. And his resurrection gives us hope that we too might someday rise from the dead. And so looking to the cross, so seeing the cross, well, it's a reminder, again, we are not alone. He has not abandoned us. He has not left us. He has not forgotten us. He loves us and will never leave us. And sometimes he'll carry us.